What's going on, guys? Mark here from Labyrinth Studios, and today I want to talk about headphone monitoring in your studio and how you can use a digital mixer to have a tablet controlled headphone monitoring setup for your musicians recording in your live room in your studio. So first off, let's talk about the differences between mixers and audio interfaces. For many of you recording via a DAW on your computer, you will be or will have used an audio interface to record with. An audio interface is essentially a set of I/O, preamps and analog to digital converters. A mixer is really more of a front end for mixing live or in the studio, with preamps, EQs, pan pots and faders, offering a way to route and balance audio signal sources together. Traditionally, mixers have not had any means to record without external hardware, but in more recent years we have seen audio interfaces built into mixing consoles. Where it gets really interesting is with digital mixing consoles that are targeted more towards the live sound industry. Primarily mixers like the Behringer X32, Soundcraft UI series and Presonus Studio Live mixers pack a huge feature set at a very affordable price. You get heaps of I/O, a wider range of built-in EQs, compressors, effects and loads more stuff. They come in many different form factors, from large fader-based consoles to rack mount units. Pretty much all of these consoles have tablet control functionality, allowing you to remotely control your console. This allows remote control of bus mixes, which you can use for headphone monitoring mixes. So not only do you get a great audio interface with all the functionality of a mixing console, allowing you to mix fully or partly out the box if you so wish, and most of these digital mixers can be used as a control surface for your DAW. You also get a built-in powerful headphone monitoring system. Normally, many recording studios will just bus out their audio interface from their DAW to a headphone amp and send out levels to musicians that way, which works just fine, but doesn't really allow you to craft an independent mix with EQ, compressors and effects for each headphone mix. To do this, you'd likely need a bunch of separate outboard hardware, a lot of cabling and some fairly complex patching going on. This way as well, you also can't give musicians their own control over their headphone mix, so they have to ask you over TalkBack to adjust their levels or add any effects. Anything they need in their headphone mixes, they have to ask you to make those changes in their mix, which can be a bit frustrating at times, both for the musician and for the recording engineer. Okay, so we're just about ready for a take. Just let me know what you need in your headphone. Yeah, I need more cowbell. So more cowbell. No problem. How's that? Yeah, so like more, but just a fraction less than you just sent me. Try that. Yeah, that's great, but just like a touch more. Sure. Try this. Yeah, just a little less. Okay. Yeah, so I think we were good where we were first at, actually. To get around this, many studios started incorporating analog splits of their live room patching to independent mixing console setups for each musician in the live room, which involves a lot of extra cabling and expense on additional hardware. In more recent years, there have surfaced a lot of digital headphone monitoring control setups, which do allow musicians to control their own headphone mix, but this can be quite costly yet again and requires a fair amount of work to integrate into your setup. So here at Labyrinth Studios, we are using the Behringer X32 as our main audio interface. We decided that we would just buy some cheap secondhand tablets, a router that we already had knocking around, and use the Mixing Station app to be able to give a tablet to each musician in the live room to exclusively control their own headphone mix, including EQ, panning, effects, and of course levels. It's interesting to me that I've never really seen any studios do this, even though it's incredibly easy to set up if you already have a digital mixer as your front end. Of course, I realise that this does already require that you are using a digital mixer like the X32 as your studio audio interface, but for those of you that are or are interested in making the switch, I think this is a pretty amazing benefit that you get from doing so. So let's run through how all of this works. First off, we have 4 old Amazon Fire tablets that we have situated in the live room. These can be had for around £20 or so off eBay if you are willing to hunt around enough. Look for the HD6 Fire if you are going to go with the Amazon tablets, as these, from my experience, have the best compatibility. Some of the really old Fire tablets you can find for even cheaper on eBay, but I've found that they do have trouble installing the Google Play Store on them. Amazon Fire tablets don't have the Google Play Store installed on them by default. I won't explain in this video how you do it, but if you give it a Google, you can find instructions online on how to do that. It's very easy, but some of the older tablets, it either doesn't work or is much more difficult to get working correctly, and you'll need the Google Play Store in order to install the Mixing Station app. Mixing Station is an app that runs with Behringer and Allen & Heath digital consoles. I'm sure it runs with other ones as well, but those are the main ones. The Mixing Station app is great in that it has really good compatibility, so it runs on very old hardware. It doesn't have to be of any good spec at all. It runs really well. It's a very lightweight app. It will run on Android versions down to around Android 4.0, so it will run more than just fine on very old Android hardware. It does also run on iOS as well, so if you have an iPad, then it should also run just fine on that. It's a free app you can download on the Android or iOS stores. There is a Pro version as well, which we will need in this case, as the Pro version allows you to have control over independent bus monitoring on the app, and we will need that in order for this to work. The Pro version only costs a couple of quid, and it's well worth it in my opinion. It's the most well designed digital mixer app that I've ever used, and I love it. So for our tablet setup, we wanted to be able to have a way of mounting them to microphone stands. We took some PC monitor desk clamp mounts. We took the Visa mount that came on them off, and then sawed down the bar of the mount to make it a bit shorter, as they were quite long, the ones that we got. Then we attached these cheap bike holder rubber mounts to the arm of the desk mount. Clamps on really nice and tightly. They only cost a few quid off eBay, and it works really well. You've got a lot of adjustment there, so you can swivel the tablet round or angle it in different positions. This makes an awesome holder for the tablet that will clamp to just about anything, mic stands or any surface that you can think of really. It's very sturdy and durable, has a nice amount of weight to it, so it actually helps kind of weigh down mic stands a bit more, which can be quite useful sometimes. They work out cheaper than most purpose-built tablet mic stand holders that you can buy. They're a lot more versatile in my opinion and work a lot better, so I would recommend going this route if you are willing to invest a little bit of time in rigging this together. A lot of the ones that are purpose built on the market that I've found are just not very good. So once we had these sorted, we hooked up a router. Just about any router will do. We are using one by TP-Link. We hooked that up to the X32, set our IP addresses on the tablet and on the console, and connected to the app. When you connect to the app, it gives you the option of locking down access to individual mix buses via the mix access option. This means you can connect to one of the X32's output buses directly, which then gives you control on the tablet of all the sends going to that particular bus. So we assigned each tablet to a separate bus and keep those set on those buses and labeled on the tablet, so we know each time we come to set up which tablet is assigned to which mix, which means we don't ever have to reconfigure anything at all. So we have a tablet dedicated to each headphone mix. We also keep a charger and a long USB extension just so that the tablets don't ever run out of juice mid-session when we are recording. Lastly, to complete the setup, we needed a headphone amp to drive the headphones for each headphone mix. The idea here is that you send each bus output on your console to a channel on your headphone amp, as you need a way of amplifying each headphone output. Just using the outputs off your mixing console, they won't have any means of amplifying the signal enough to drive and power your headphones. You want a headphone amp that has separate inputs for each headphone channel. Many headphone amps will just have one or two sets of inputs, which means that despite the number of outputs on your mixing console, you won't be able to have more than a couple of independent headphone mixes, which is not what we want here. We needed 8 independent headphone mixes, so we went with the Behringer PowerPlay HA8000, which has 8 headphone outputs and stereo inputs for each channel on the headphone amp, so we can have 8 individual headphone mixes. This headphone amp, whilst a little noisy at times, I think is probably the best value on the market right now in terms of headphone amps. It's a very affordable price point and you get the most amount of headphone channels for that price point. The key thing here is that you get those 8 individual inputs on each headphone channel. There aren't many other options out there that offer that same amount of I/O. Despite it having a not so great noise floor, we have found anyway, you really don't need to drive the output on each headphone channel that hard. We usually have our set around 9 o'clock. At that point you don't really introduce any kind of noise. It's around 11 o'clock or so we've found where that noise floor starts creeping in. Although it is there and it's something to consider, we haven't really found it to be a problem, and we get pretty clean and quiet headphone mixes through the unit. Each stereo input on the unit is on a single balance jack, so we did have to make a bunch of Y-split cables, and this will probably be the case for you, as you'll need 2 separate outputs for your left and right for each headphone mix from your console going into each channel on the headphone amp. We run our cabling through a patch bay, so we had to go left and right XLR out from the X32 to left and right balanced mono jacks into our patch bay, then out again from there balanced mono jack to a single stereo balance jack into the input of the headphone amp, and then from there, of course, from the outputs on each channel to our headphones. This whole tablet mixer setup has been working flawlessly for us so far in the studio. Clients are generally really impressed with it. In this day and age, most people are very comfortable and familiar with tablet and smartphone interfaces and using touchscreens, so I've found that this is a very quick and intuitive setup for people to learn and use in the studio to control their headphone mixes with. For me, I have found that out of all the headphone monitoring systems that I've used, this is my favorite. It's so easy to set up and very intuitive for people to use. They've not got to get to grips with some piece of hardware that they're unfamiliar with. They just have a tablet to use. So I hope you found this video interesting and useful. Drop a comment below if you have any questions regarding our setup that we have here at the studio. I'll try my best to answer any questions that you guys might have. Also, let us know what your headphone monitoring setup is currently and how it's working for you. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Take care guys, and I'll see you in the next one.